Hello, everyone. Frank McLaughlin from McLaughlin Lofts. Thank you for joining me this afternoon. I hope everyone's doing well. This is my fifth live stream, and I'm excited. I think that hopefully I can help some fanciers. The game is not difficult. If you master feeding, it's going to make the game a lot easier. I mean, I raced the entire old bird season. My birds were out of the lofts 2 to 3 days per week, many weeks only twice. They raced and they had one training toss. The rest of the time they were in the loft, and I had fabulous results. So again, the game is not difficult if you can manage the feed, have healthy pigeons, train them moderately. You'll do well. So I can start taking questions, and I do appreciate this. My first question, what birds do you like more, sprint, middle, or long distance pigeons? I think that the majority of your pigeons should be middle distance pigeons. They'll do the job at sprint racing. They'll do the job right through, usually out through 10 hours on the wing. I like middle distance pigeons, and what I consider middle distance pigeons, 200 to 400 mile type pigeons. I know in Belgium, usually over 350, 375 miles, they're considered long distance. 200 to 400 mile pigeons. I would concentrate on having mostly middle distance pigeons because they're best for young birds. They're best for most of the races, and mix in some long distance and some sprint pigeons also. I have young birds that I just let out a couple times, still waiting for them to start flying out of the house or start flying. Well, if they've only been out a couple times, I would just leave them, give them a couple weeks of just getting settled, let them go to the house, let them go to the ground, back and forth to the loft. Sometimes they'll get spooked up by a hawk or something, and then they'll start to fly. But after a couple weeks, they should be good and settled if they're going out daily and just enjoying themselves and bonding to the yard and bonding to the pigeon loft. Then you can start chasing them up, whether you have a flag on a pole or something. Now, don't completely horrify them. Just chase them up. Be easy about chasing them up. But, chase them up, and they'll make a few circles. They might land back down, and you can do it a couple of times, and they'll get in the routine of flying. At my place, usually it's the hawks that can chase them up and get them going. So, but after a couple of weeks, it's time for them to get up into the air, and don't be afraid to chase them up. Let's see. I wormed my birds in the water yesterday. Not sure if every bird drank the water. Can I do it again today? Yeah, James, I tend to worm them for 2 days. I use the moxidectin. I put it in and I leave it for 48 hours. So yeah, feel free. It's not going to hurt them. I always leave it in for a couple days, no matter what wormer that I use, because they're not going to drink it the first day. They don't like it, and they tend to stay away, and they don't get enough of a dose. How do you feed the young birds for 300 and 350 mile races? My young birds, now, if the race is going to be, say, 300 to 350 mile race, we're talking 7 to 8 hours usually on my race course. They make pretty good speeds, could be longer, but usually 8-hour race. I would keep them on the depurative mix right through the week, probably the night before shipping. If the race is looking tough, the night before shipping, I might give them high energy seeds. It's kind of a mixture. I use the Versalaga energy mix, and they have a traditional mix with a lot of little seeds, a lot of fat seeds. So the night before, they get some fat seeds, maybe all they want. And the day of shipping, a lot of times I'll give them the fat seeds also. Normally, I just give it on the day of shipping. I would give them the high energy, the fat seeds, if it's only going to be like a 7-hour, 8-hour race. Buoyancy and corkiness is more important. A bird can fly 7 or 8 hours, maybe not into a stiff headwind, but a normal no wind or a slight tailwind, they don't need a lot of fat. You're better off keeping the birds buoyant. So I just really feed the rich fat seeds for 1 day before a 300 or 350 mile race. Any worming during the races? I worm usually before the season, and then I talked about, I think in my moxidectin video, the wormer that I use. I did a video on the horse wormer moxidectin Quest, and I worm usually once during the season before a big race. About a week before a big race, I'll give it for 24 hours, and it offers some kind of boost. I've always had a good boost on a nice performance after worming the birds. So if you use the moxidectin, I'll actually add a link below to that video on the wormer. And I talk about how I use it. But for 24 hours a week before a big race, I tend to have a big result. What would you focus the most for young bird season? If you have late hatches around 5 to 6 weeks old and only 8 weeks to the season, well, most of the people make a mistake and they try to push them like I'm in the northeast of the United States. We're in the middle of summer or right in the heat of the summer. I would take it easy. I'd pick my days. I'd train on cooler days, train early, not too regularly, get the birds educated. And again, I talk a lot about educating the birds in my Educating Young Bird video, but get them educated and then use the first few weeks as just training for those late hatches. Let them get experience. Don't push them hard. Don't try to, have their body weight perfect. Just get them through and then try to dominate with them the second half of the season. The biggest mistake many fanciers make, even older fanciers, is they're pushing their birds now. We start racing towards the end of August, and many have been training for the last month, and they're going to continue to train through the heat of the summer. And I just think it's crazy. Pick your days. If you have a cool day, nothing wrong with training the birds, educating them, but don't push them. Don't put a lot of miles on them. Just teach them, get them breaking, teach them to come home, and all that would be really helpful to the birds. What vitamins do you use during the racing season? Well, I have a video with what goes day by day, what I do during the racing season, but I like Red Cell, the horse vitamin. And it's been around forever. It has a lot of iodine. It's a vitamin and mineral supplement. I do that one day a week. And on the day of return, they just get a vitamin electrolyte. I buy at Tractor Supply. It's a chicken vitamin electrolyte mix. And again, I have that in my video, the natural products and now what I do day to day in racing. I'll try to put a link below after this feed. Does the temperature affect how much or what you feed? No, for me, not really. I start racing in April and it's cold and damp. It may get into the 30 degrees Fahrenheit, close to 0 Celsius, and it's rainy and damp. And then we end up the race season in the really warmth and high humidity. So I don't really change too much. I might give them slightly more, but not too much more due to the cold. Thank you. I see that someone sent me some cash. That's really nice. It's not expected, but thank you so much. I work short tosses in the compass. Now we're on a straight path west. Going to be a tough one again. The Connecticut Classic Club. Mind you, we're in Worcester, Massachusetts. It's not an easy task. I know it's, once they train the compass, I would just go down the race course. The biggest thing with the babies is teaching them to break. They don't do it automatically. Find a fancier that's not too close to you. Try to train with him. Try to put them on a training truck. They will get messed up, but after a bit, they'll break. I use a training truck that's maybe 40 miles south of me. And the first few times I put my birds on, I'm like way behind those guys. But after 5, 6, 7 times, if it's a 60-mile toss, I have the birds in 70 minutes, and the people south of me have them in 70 minutes. So they're breaking. They learn to break. They will learn, but you have to teach them to break. So I would concentrate on that. I see John McGinley's here. John is a fancier in my club. Young guy, he's going to have a bright future. And he won the 600-mile race a couple weeks ago. Had the only daybird in the club, and him and his father are partners, and just spectacular performance. Congratulations. Red Cell versus Mega Cell. What's your thoughts? I'm not familiar with the Mega Cell vitamin. It's probably very similar, but it's just, I've used the Red Cell forever. Quick story, Belgian fancier had me ship him about 30 years ago, had me ship a gallon of Red Cell. I hate to use his name, but he's a famous Belgian fancier. And then he had like one of the only daybirds at a long distance race. And he wanted me to keep Red Cell, secret from all his competitors. And I'm thinking, a cheap horse vitamin that we have in America and all the products they have in Belgium. And he was worried about keeping Red Cell secret from his competitor. Why do some birds suddenly get a black tongue? What's the cause? I'm not sure why they would suddenly get a black tongue. It doesn't make a lot of sense. I don't really see it. Some birds naturally have a black tip, but that's a good question. If they're healthy, they're acting good, they look right, I don't even worry about it. I wouldn't give it a second thought, but if they're not acting right, they don't look right, something might be bothering the birds. What distance do you start training young birds? Are you thought of creeping them out? I creep them out where I live. It's very difficult. And I start like at 1/4 mile. And I know I talked about my training young bird video that my first training toss, I crate them, I drive them around for about 20 minutes. I put them in the yard and I liberate them in the yard. The first time in the basket and the first time in the car, they get motion sick. You'll see them, they'll be up chucking, they get dizzy. So that's part of the training. I creep them out and I'll have my losses short. I won't have losses once I get out 25, 30 miles, but I have most of my losses really around the loft. I don't think the location for homing is great where my birds are now. I never had issues when I lived in Oregon, and I never had issues when I lived up in Quincy, Massachusetts in the city. But this location, the birds don't route. They circle, but they never leave. And I have had problems getting them started with the training over the years. Let's see. What do you prefer, young birds once they have started ranging, basket training, or loft flying? Once they start ranging, it's time to train. Don't let them just range and range and range. If they're ranging, start training them. They're not going to gain anything by just ranging for months. Now, I'm not talking every day. Just start them, go different directions, take them on a different, every several days, but start training them. You don't have to train them consistently. You don't have to burn them up. But if they're ranging, it's time to start training them. They'll learn more. They'll be better for it. And if you start early enough, you can always get them out 25 or 30 miles and then shut them down for like a month. Don't do anything. Just leave them in the loft and then start them back up. Let them out to fly and start training before the season. You may hear my African gray parrot in the background. He tends to carry on when I'm doing these live streams for some reason. Hopefully he won't be swearing or anything like that. Do you use any respiratory during the race season? If so, which one? Well, I've been over 10 years completely antibiotic-free. I will not flock treat the pigeons. I don't flock treat the pigeons. I won't flock treat the pigeons. I have birds on my race team, 4 and 5 years old, that are dominating. They had a fabulous old bird season, never a drop of antibiotics in their life. Now, it takes a while to get there. I did, a video on that, on why are your birds sick? It takes a while to go antibiotic-free. But if your birds are used to antibiotics and you keep the flock healthy with the antibiotics and you flock treat, the weak ones stay on the team. They stay in the program. And if they're successful, you breed from them. But the only reason they were around and were successful was because of the antibiotics. So at my loft, the weak take themselves out of the population. I don't have to take them out. They take themselves out. If they can't stay healthy, I lose them. Or if I will treat a bird one time individually, I won't flock treat. But, I'm handling convention birds right now. I've had a few with canker. I've treated them with the canker tablets. I left them right in with the others. I don't separate them out. I've had a couple with one-eye colds. I injected them with the LA200, the injectable. I buy it at Tractor Supply, cleared them right up. But again, I individually treated those birds, and they're not my pigeons. So I'm going to do everything I can to get them through the race. If they were my pigeons, they got sick again, I'd probably take them out of the population. But these are, I'm handling pigeons for other people. So I don't treat for respiratory. I do have a whole system of natural products that I like that are very helpful. But it takes a year or two for your birds to get up to speed with the natural program. You're going to have some sick ones. You'll have some breeders raising some, babies that are sickly. But after a year, the immune system, everything ramps up. They get stronger. My birds keep getting stronger every year. So I would recommend, if it are possible, try to go with the least amount of medication as you can. How long does it take flights to grow back once they are pulled? Like, say you cut the 9th flight and wait a couple weeks, you pull it, probably 5 weeks. It takes a little bit of time. I would give yourself at least 5 weeks for the flight to grow back. I see Guardian Angel has family in Connecticut, not too far from me, maybe, 70 miles. My intention is exactly to follow some of your methods that have given you the advantage against the Norwood Club. Therefore, I appreciate all the information you're putting. It's really helping me. Well, I fly in a tough club, and there's some really good fanciers, and you have to be good. But, I use methods that limit the amount of time I have to spend with the birds. So my methods don't involve a lot of training. I'm only at the lofts in the morning, but I have really good pigeons. It's not like I'm clocking 20 birds ahead. I had 5 hens that did most of my work this whole Obert season. They were phenomenal. There were 5 spectacular hens. And even if I was racing any one of those hens, I would have had a good season. So really good pigeons, prepared, managed correctly. They do great things. If you guys could like the video, everybody always says when I watch these things, the video. I guess it helps with the algorithm. I'd appreciate it. Let's see. The season has finished in my country now, 4 months of molting. How do you feed the races during this period? I put feeders in all my sections, and I just fill them up with, I use Versalaga Champion mix, just a good 14 to 16% protein mix, and maybe mix in a little chicken pellets into the mix. And I give them all they want during the molting. Most of my birds aren't all they want, except when they're racing year round, because I don't live there. I go over only in the mornings. So I can't feed, twice a day or anything like that. Do you cut feathers before the racing season or force molting? Normally, no. I don't really worry too much about young birds. So normally I just let the molt be as it is. But this year, because I'm handling pigeons for other people, I did cut and pull the 9th flights of my convention birds. They're about halfway in right now. And when they get a little longer, I did already cut the 10th. I'm going to pull the 10th flight. So I know the people I'm handling birds for will have a full 9th and 10th flight at the convention race, which is early November. Been using Red Cell since '89. It's a good product. Yeah, I've been using it for 50 years. That's an old product. My own method of competing single mature females. Have these females ever been mated? My hens, I don't mate them before the season. They just start right into racing. Now, I do have my celibate hens with the widow cocks right now. I'm going to let them raise a round of babies, both cocks and hens. Sometimes I just let them sit eggs, but they flew so great, I'm going to let them raise a round of babies. I don't mate them before the season. Part of the reason I don't mate them before the season is I don't want them molting late in the season when we're racing long distance races. So usually my pigeons are maybe on their first flight. Sometimes I had a hen win late in the season. She had dropped her 2nd flight, but I don't breed them before the season, mainly because I want as much feather, as many wing flights as possible going into the long distance races. Hi, Frank. I'm South Africa. How do I get my hands on one of your champion birds from your loft? Well, I'm not exactly sure. We could always, there's always shipments going over, and, we could work something out, or they could go over with one of the races possibly, and we could get it to you then, but that's nice of you. What type of race course do you fly? Are there mountain ranges? Well, I used to think there were mountain ranges until I moved to Oregon and I saw real mountain ranges. My race course, our birds come through what's called the Berkshire Mountains. Yeah, they're mountains, but compared to the 10,000 foot mountains that were in Oregon, yeah, they're more like 3,000 foot mountains. And they also in the long distance races can come through the Catskill Mountains. And again, mountains, but not Utah or Oregon or Washington or anything like that. I mean, there's some mountains. We fly west to east. It's a predominantly tailwind course, and the speeds are usually, fairly fast, but, we have our share of headwinds or, nasty days. What about regularly treating for malaria? I never have. And I know that in the South or in warmer climates, people have had problems with malaria. I've actually had pigeons would have 2 great seasons and then just come late, just never quite on the pace. And maybe it wasn't malaria. But I think if you're in the heat and you deal with a lot of mosquitoes, and they say pigeon flies are the biggest transporter of malaria. So work hard to keep, the birds pest free. I use a permethrin I'll spray the birds, usually the race team, like about every 3 weeks to a month. I give them a blast on each wing and at the vents. And I think that having that permethrin on them will keep, anything off of them. But maybe in a warm climate, a malaria treatment would be good. Hey, Frank, some of my birds are panting and wings open, down a little as if they flew 400 miles, even on cool days. Any idea? I mean, they could just be out of shape. I mean, they're going to start. You might be overfeeding them. They might be too heavy. I wouldn't rush to treating them with anything. I mean, for me, I don't treat them. I mean, they tend to either get better on their own or I lose them. But I would suggest that maybe, add 50% barley to the mix, feed them once a day till they leave the barley while they're just out exercising. And you'll all of a sudden find these pigeons are a little more light and buoyant and they're not struggling to work. I mean, if they're heavy or if they're on a chicken pellet or 16% protein, all they can eat, and they're going to get heavy and they're going to struggle to fly. So I would try changing the grade. The grain mix, go 50% barley, and also make sure the ventilation is good. You want to better to have more ventilation than less. Don't worry about drafts or anything like that. Make sure the air is moving through the loft so you're not going to deal with many respiratory issues. Let's see. Can you tell me how you approach a flying season with maturity? If you live in the mountain area and in the spring before the season, the birds fly outside at temperature 5 degrees Celsius. I'm in the worst position. So they go around the mountains and arrive home last, shortest distance. That's a tough one. I mean, if it's a location and you're sitting in a position where you have mountains sitting in front of you and, you fanciers in the combine don't, it's a tough spot. Usually at the longer distance, you can make up some time. I would concentrate on nailing the body weight and getting the feed right. I won some long distance races like this season. A couple times the birds were so far ahead. It was crazy. I shocked myself. I knew they were good pigeons, but there were a lot of good pigeons and a lot of good fanciers. And so if you can really get your birds in perfect, proper body weight, you can probably be more competitive, but it's tough. If you have a big wall in front of you and other people don't, it's going to be difficult, but try to enjoy the sport and look at it to see, even if you're close and realize that your pigeons did an amazing job. Sometimes you have to read a race sheet and to see you're 5 minutes behind, but your bird was at a 15-minute disadvantage. So that's a really good thing. Let's see. When you won the Hoosier, did you buy that bird from Big Andy? No. Probably the confusion is I was pretty lucky. I won the Hoosier 2 years in a row. 2018, they didn't have a race in 19. Then I won the race in 2020. The mother of the 2020 Hoosier winner won the Big Andy 451 mile. So she did race down in Big Andy's race. And she won that race. So no, I didn't get the birds from Andy, but Andy's a good guy and he has terrific pigeons. So anybody could get good birds from Andy. I noticed a lot more losses during old season due to the smoke from Canada. Yeah, I was really worried. One of my hens, she was one of the best racing hens, well, in the country, probably. Looks like she's going to win all distance, American Racing Pigeon Union all distance champion. I think she won it. I don't know if anybody else is still racing, but I was afraid to ship her. She had won back-to-back long distance combines by a wide margin, and they were predicting so much smoke along the course. I said, you know what, am I going to throw this bird away? I've never shipped pigeons through smoke before. So I think it caused some problems, but we had a good race. I ended up winning the race without shipping her with my second best hen. But again, I think it causes some issues. Birds' lungs and their respiratory tract dealing with that smoke, it could be tougher on them than it is on us. How old does a young bird get before they drop the 9th and 10th flight? That's a tough one because I have first round babies that I made it January 2nd, and because they were weaned so early, they never dropped a flight. They went into the dark system. They molted their body, and they haven't even started the wing molt. So there's really no guarantee. Sometimes they molt really quick. Some pigeons are very fast molting pigeons. Some pigeons, aren't. Usually, if you wean the birds, say March, April, they're going to be on their 9th and 10th flight come October. So it takes a while for them to go through the entire molt. So you do have to account for that. Forcible, there's such a thing as a white sablon. The question is like the Duras sablon pigeons. I mean, I've had Duras sablon pigeons for years. They've been tremendous pigeons for me, and I've never seen a white one. I've got a few white flights here and there, a single, maybe just a few white flights, but I've never seen a white one. Most likely something else has been mixed in, and but again, I've never seen a white one. And I see Mike Davis is here, another natural health person, and he's doing great with it, and he's going to have a great career continued with this natural health. And thank you. I had a great old bird season. That was really, really exciting. My brother helps me, and he's, without him, he locks the lofts. He'll take the birds on a toss. Again, we don't toss much, but usually if we do toss, he takes them out. And we had a really successful old bird season. I was thrilled. How much red cell do you use and give to your bird? Well, I put 1 teaspoon to the gallon, just 1 regular teaspoon to the gallon. I know some people mix it on the feed, but I think it's too strong. And I would just use 1 teaspoon of the gallon. It's plenty. I'd rather go light with all this stuff. I know some people feel more is better, but it's better to go a little less than overdoing it. How many times pigeon can join a race for 1 year? 2-time races. Okay, I'm not exactly sure on the question. My pigeons usually, say old bird season, they'll race my same team. The best pigeons will race maybe the first 6 weeks in a row, which might be 100, 250 miles, 200 miles, 300 miles, and then we go into 400 mile, and then I'll send some of them to the 4, and then I go every other week. My same team will fly the long distance races. They'll fly 400 mile, they'll have a week off. They'll fly 500 mile, week off, 500 mile, week off, 600 miles. So fed correctly, rest correctly. Like I rest my birds 1 complete day of rest for every 2 hours on the wing. I think that's part of the reason why I have pigeons winning at 4 and 5 years old is they get to recover, they get to rest. Many people, their birds come home from a race, they flew 6, 7, 8 hours. The next day they're out flying. I'm thinking, it's crazy. It's absolutely crazy. Let them recover, let them rest. And I've talked about it before, and you can see it in my system. I did a video on prepping my hens to win back-to-back long-distance combines. My pigeons will fly a long-distance race. They'll come home on the Saturday. They'll eat all the rich seeds they want that day and halfway through the following day, which is Sunday. And then I'll do the 2 days of apple cider vinegar, but they'll go back on the depurative. But they won't leave the loft. This year, they didn't leave the loft until the following Tuesday. So what were they in the loft? 10 days or something? In the loft, no exercise. And they went on a toss on Tuesday and a toss on Thursday, maybe 35 miles on Tuesday. Usually I like to do 50 miles on Thursday. 1 week I did only 2 35-mile tosses because I love the body weight of the pigeon. Then they came back and they flew and they won another long distance combine. So in a 2-week period, they were out of the loft 2 times for 2 short tosses. So again, if you feed them right, you rest them right. They don't need a lot of work. And that's why my methods are good for fanciers that maybe don't have a lot of time. Yeah, I would do things differently. If all I did was live at the lofts and play with pigeons, I'd probably be able to do things differently. But I don't live at the lofts and I don't play with the race team more than like a few minutes every morning. Let's see. I would like to recommend a very good pigeon book, Diagnose. Yeah, The Pigeon by Dr. Colin Walker, phenomenal vet. I love his books. I bought the big one, the big one he had recently, maybe came out 4 or 5 years ago. He's really something. Great read, great experience, endless amount of information. Terrific book if you don't have it. I have it and loved it. But again, I'm more of a natural guy, and I will treat birds individually if I have to. Do you feel it's best to single toss birds after a few tosses in the same location, see which birds lead or which birds are followers? Yeah, no. Actually, up until the first, say, 25 years of my racing career, my father was into bird dogs, so I would send the birds with him when he would enter these field trials. He would go different directions, and he may be 60, 70 miles away, and he'd spend the day letting the birds go in small groups or even single tossing them, and I had great results. In the last 25 years, I have not done anything but flock train the birds, and I've had great results. So to me, I've got a 50-year sample, and I think single tossing is a big waste of time. So I think that there's only so many good ones. They fly to the front, and the rest of them, no matter what you do with them, it's not going to really make a difference. So if you don't have the time, flock train them. And if to spend a half a day single tossing birds, I don't have the time, haven't had the time in years. So again, I've seen no difference in results by never, ever breaking my birds up in small groups, just flock training them. You mentioned Quest a week before a long distance race. Was this one-off or something you do regularly? I do it every year. I treat with the Quest a week before the 600-mile race, and I've had great results. I mean, I'm going back many, many years. I'm thinking 20 years maybe that I've been doing it, and I've had great results, winning, combines. And this year, the 600-mile race kept getting delayed, and I treated with the Quest a week before, but we were supposed to ship the race, and then I was leaving for Iceland with the family. My brother was going to clock the birds, but the race was delayed. So my birds were locked up, I don't know, 5 or 6 days before shipping, and my brother was taking care of them, and he does a great job with them. I mean, but we ended up having a good race. We were 10th New England Open, I think, 10th overall. They were 6-day birds, and they were short enders to me. And the longest day bird was John McGinley in my club, him and his dad. They had the longest day bird in the race. And they were coming in like 8:40, and it was dark. And my hen was 10th. She came in the next morning and 10th overall, 388. She was a super hen. My third best hen. I retired my 2 best hens earlier in the season. I was just so afraid of losing them. They were just incredible. But I would use them a week before. One time, use the Quest a week before a long distance race. Let's see. I have a hard time settling young birds due to hawks. Have to let out a couple times so they don't attract too much attention. Yeah, I do the same thing when I'm settling my babies. I let out like a percentage of them. I never let them all out at the same time, because I'd rather the hawk chase 20. I might let out 20 or 25. Say there's 125, I'll do 25 a day, just a random 25. I don't know which 25, but I'll do a random 25 over maybe a 10-day period to get them settled in case the hawks drive one group really crazy. But that's best. I know the hawks have been tough on us. I mean, I remember when I started, we never used to think about it. We'd open hole the birds from morning till night, and they just had a blast. The birds were just enjoying themselves all the time, but you really can't do that anymore. Let's see. Is it a good idea to train my young birds on Tuesday from 90 kilometers and race weekly from 400 to 700 kilometers, or should they rather sit all week and race on Saturday? Well, I think it's best if you're racing 400 to 700 kilometers each week. They should I would train them on Thursday if at all possible. All they would need is like maybe a 1-hour flight just to stretch them out, let them come home, let them eat, let them replenish, and then ship them. And that's all they need. If they're fed correctly, if you feed like I feed with the depurative most of the week, they only need 1 training toss a week between the 400 to 700 kilometers. I do think that they need to fly. I mean, I've gone and done really well without putting them out. They weren't even out of the loft for a week. I've had great results, but I find that sometimes when I fly a long distance race and my pigeons are in for 10 days, sometimes that first toss, I'll have a couple of those birds. My good birds are a little late. They're like a couple minutes behind the group. And then they're snapped back in. So I think they need a couple couple of flights, or at least one flight. 2-week period, yeah, 2 flights. But for 1 week period, 1 flight is fine between those long races. I notice you feed less to get it. See, in Europe, UK, they seem to feed all the bird they want, and everyone in the nation has a winner. What's the difference between there and the United States? Well, if everybody's doing the same thing, there's still going to be a winner. I think most of the sport ship their pigeons too heavy to the races. If they're round and full, they're too heavy. It's that simple. I mean, I don't mind a little roundness to them, but they better be super corky, super buoyant. I don't like it. That that meat is out by the keel. If there's any kind of extra weight, they have to be super corky and super buoyant for the long distance races. So it's a fine line. I want to give them enough fat to fly the race, but I don't want them carrying any extra weight. So if you can nail that, you can nail the feeding where they have enough fat, but they're not carrying any extra body weight. Boy, they do amazing things. And I saw what my hens did this year. I mean, against the winds, a couple of combine races, the winds were against me. I mean, they were blowing out of the north. I'm in the north, and my pigeons were way in front. Like, I mean, I was shocked. I mean, I could see winning, but a couple times they were way in front. Not just one, it was like 3. And they didn't come together. They were a few minutes apart, but yet the body weight is so important. If you have good pigeons and they're prepared right, you got them light and corky. And a lot of the Europeans, I know some of the Belgians are feeding more like me. They're sending their birds lighter to the races, corkier. They always would send them heavy. And if there's all a bunch of fatties in the race, a fatty's going to win the race. But, if the fatties are going against pigeons that are like mine, then they might be in some serious trouble. When you mention pigeons must be buoyant, what do you mean? Well, I think they like a piece of cork. You don't want to feel any weight. Like if this is my water bottle here, if this was empty, it's like the difference between a full water bottle and an empty water bottle. My birds go to the race. They might feel like this, have this much meat on them, but they feel like an empty water bottle. And other guys are going to the race and they feel like a full water bottle. So you want them buoyant, and what I'm saying is it's almost like, they're hollow. They've got some meat on them, but no weight. Nice feather, very, very corky, very, very light. I've won races with pigeons, and I scared myself. Like I'm thinking, oh boy, is there enough? I mean, did I take it too far? Winning long distance, and then the race comes and you win a big long distance race when the bird felt like there was no body weight to it. And it was a good sized pigeon, but no weight. It had meat, but no weight. It was just so light and buoyant and corky. And if you can get that, if you can give them enough energy and have the body weight right, boy, they're tough to beat. Again, they have to be good pigeons. I mean, a stiff isn't going to. And again, I'm not getting 20 ahead. I'm getting my best pigeons ahead. But if you have good pigeons and they're prepared correctly, they can do amazing things. Hey, Milton out in Hawaii, he likes my expertise, so I appreciate it. I hope I can help. I've been doing it a long time. I mean, someone asked me, who did I learn from? I had a question, who was my mentor? Who did I learn from? Well, I actually listened to everyone, and I would try to improve on methods. And a lot of things that I would hear, I would ask why. Like somebody would ask, ask why do they do it? If someone can't tell me why they do it, I'm not going to do it. Like usually people are doing the same thing their grandfathers did. And then I started going to Belgium in the late 80s, and then the lights kind of went off, and I started asking questions and seeing what they did and try to improve on what people were doing. And then as I had less and less time, I still like to have results. So I kept trying to improve. So can I perform without a lot of training and without, just good pigeons, healthy with good body weight? And it can be done. But it just, it takes some experimentation. But I try to help the fanciers, get there without a lot of work. In breeding, should I let my conditioned breeders all they can eat when I start pairing them up? Yeah, see, I don't limit the feed. I turn the lights on about 2 weeks before. I'll run the lights 24 hours a day, 2 weeks before breeding. And that all of a sudden causes the hormones to get going in the pigeons. They think it's springtime. They immediately drop weight. They they go from being relatively full and overweight to perfect weight. So there's no need to limit the feed or cut back the feed. Just turn the lights on for 24 hours a day, 2 weeks before the breeding season. And then I leave the lights on right through until the days get longer into the springtime. I want them to be able to feed the babies throughout the night if they have to. I want to make sure the babies are getting everything they need. So I leave the lights on. Yes, I have them on the light side of weight, lots of air in the loft. I understand, not fit birds, but pushing them in the air. Yeah, it is odd that the birds are panting. I mean, they may have some type of respiratory condition. I'm not sure if, your pigeons have been treated regularly for respiratory, but again, they might be dealing with some type of respiratory condition. And hopefully they'll come out of it. I mean, sometimes it just takes a little rest. I know, like I've had pigeons where, they get injured, hit by a hawk, and then they're in the loft for 2 or 3 weeks. And all of a sudden they're the best acting bird in the loft. They're just going and strutting and cooing and loaded with vitality. So sometimes a little rest does them more good than anything else. And you may just want to give them a week off and see if it helps. Let's see where we're at here. One more question. When do you stop training young boys prior to the first race? How far do you train them before the race? I guess maybe, when do I stop? Well, I train them usually out about 50 miles for our first race, which is like maybe 120 miles. And I use the first few races more or less as training. And I don't push them though. All the big races are at the end of the season. So I take it really slow and I don't hurt them and I pick my days and I'll just get through the first few weeks. And then when the bigger races come, now everybody else's pigeons are burnt up from the summer, being pushed through the heat. And my birds are coming on strong at the end. And nobody remembers who won the beginning. Everybody remembers who won in the end. And at the end is when all the important races are anyways. James is in the coop with his phone in his back pocket. Well, I'm glad you can listen. I mean, that works out. I was a little worried maybe everybody's away on vacation or something and I'd be here by myself, but it didn't work out that way. Okay, when I mentioned pigeons should be buoyant, you mean as buoyant as an open plastic Coke bottle, for example? Yeah. I mean, you want them to feel the difference between a bottle full of water, no good. An empty bottle, that's good. That's kind of the weight. If you can nail that. Now, a lot of it's genetics. And I select birds for that. I select birds that are super buoyant. Everybody likes these big, full, heavy, showy type birds. And I know we all grew up with that. And but if you can select them from the beginning, select really buoyant, more feather, less meat on the pigeon, you're going to be better off. They condition easier. They fly effortlessly. So if you can concentrate on going for pigeons that have buoyancy from the start, super feather, super buoyant. And I told the story, I fell in love with a pigeon when I was a kid, this 554 Fabry pigeon, and he was just a beautiful feather and like cork. And all his babies were just super feathered and corky. And no matter what you did, winter, summer, no matter how you trained them, they always just handled just light and corky. And they flew like crazy. I dominated with those pigeons. And the lights went off. All of a sudden I said, well, that's what I started selecting for, 45 years ago. And my competitors were selecting for show standards, big, heavy back, strong bone, they're not going to fly with my pigeons. Light, corky, buoyant. Don't, select for very buoyant, very light pigeons. They don't need a lot of bone. Now, I want them strong. I don't want weaklings or, bad backs. But try to, all things being equal, select for very buoyant, corky type birds. It makes the game a lot easier. Do you think I should get my birds tested for the DNA test of the LDHA and, DID4 performance gene? People are going crazy over that. And I went to Belgium a couple of years ago, and a lot of the famous guys are selecting all their breeders and pairing by this genetic thing. It's going to fall by the wayside. Believe me, don't waste your time. If you start selecting for these genes and mating these genes together, you're going to have a whole loft of these genes with no more performance. Select by performance. Forget about all that gene stuff. It's believe me, in 5 years, nobody's going to be talking about it. And I have no interest in it. And a couple of my friends tested their best birds and they were whatever, just, BBs or whatever they were supposed to, nothing spectacular. And again, if you select for all violet eyes, you're going to have a loft of violet eyes. If you select for, all red checkers with black flecks, you're going to have a loft full of red checkers with black flecks, but your performance will be worse than ever. So yeah, don't even worry about it. There's no need. I'm glad Frederick liked my buoyancy thing. It's tough to explain sometimes. We almost have to handle pigeons together, and we'll look at that during the racing season. Here in Belgium, they're going to start with fat food during transport: corn, candy, dairy, hemp. When you know you're in the basket for 3 days, it changes the feeding before basking. Well, if I knew, yes, I account for that. My birds are on the truck on a Friday. So I'm shipping them to, like this year, we shipped to the 600-mile race. They got the fat seeds one day only, Thursday. And I assume they eat on the truck on Friday, and then they race on Saturday. So I technically, if I was racing a long-distance race in Belgium, I would feed the depurative right through shipping and let them get the fat seed, all the seed on the carrier. Because if you feed for 4 days the fat seed and they eat for 3 days in the truck, they're going to be like the full water bottle, and you want the nice light empty bottle with a lot of energy. Before the races start, can you give a supplement? The last lap, what are you giving feeds? I'm not exactly sure what. I mean, I like the oregano product, Avian Solution. It's sold by Jed's here in America. Very strong oregano product. And my convention birds are on that every day. I've had very, very few health problems with the convention birds, and I've kept them on that oregano product. And I did it last time we had a convention, and I've been pretty lucky. I also vaccinated them for with rotavirus and PMV, rota PMV, when they came in. And a lot of the people and the vets around the world are saying that rotavirus is the root of young bird sickness, so maybe there's something to it. And I poxed them when they came in. As soon as they arrived, I poxed them, and I poxed them. I have a video where I show it. I mix a little bit of the pox vaccine, and I put a microscopic drop. I'll pull the skin out the leg, and I'll just slide the needle through, and I'll get a little BB type take. So I'm thinking it's possible that pox caused such an immune response, and maybe the immune system ramped up, and I had just less sickness. Let me knock some wood, because I only had a handful of birds that got sick when many fancies are having their whole team get sick. Now, the couple times my youngsters looked off, my convention birds, and I did put them on Virkon S, which is a disinfectant that I'm probably not supposed to talk about. And I used it a half teaspoon to the gallon for 5 days. And that turned them around. But I actually been looking at pigeons for 50 years. So I recognized things before most fanciers would probably recognize things, and they didn't look right. So I put them on the Virkon S, and they were on that 3 times since April 1st. And the last time was maybe 2 weeks ago. And but so far, so good. I've only had a handful of problems out of maybe 130 birds, something like that. So I've been pretty lucky. But again, I usually tend to see it ahead of time. I like to say I know a pigeon's sick before it knows it's sick. So I can stay ahead of it in many cases just by looking at the flock if something's sluggish. The other thing I do, and I carry in my pocket a bottle of the Tony's Treasure tablets. It's a little yellow tablet. And if I saw a convention bird that looked off, was a little sluggish, I would pop 2 Tony's Treasure tablets down its throat. I did maybe 6 or 7 birds with this, 2 Tony's Treasures, and the next day they were fine. So again, I didn't flock treat them. I won't flock treat the birds, but I will treat them individually. And there's a couple of things that I think helped me. How would your program be if you were retired and I had the birds in the backyard of the lofts? Yeah, I would probably feed more rich feeds, and I'd probably train them more. My birds, I think sometimes, I don't do enough. They still have good results, but I think I could get I might even be able to have better results. But yeah, I would probably up the feed a little and maybe give them a couple training tosses depending on their body weight. But again, I've been flying so well doing what I'm doing with limited training and correct feeding that I would probably maybe still do what I'm doing and go fishing or something if I had more time. Let's see. Do you think there's more to reading eye sign than what meets the eye? Yeah, it's eye sign is like, I like rich colored eyes. I like eyes. If you bring the pigeon out into the sun, the pupil gets really small. That's important. I'll look at some birds that are photographed. Eyes will be photographed under these intense lights and the pupil's huge. It's not going to be able to fly all day in the sun. You want the pupil to get small. You want rich colored, but no one can select super breeders by eye sign. If it was that easy, then, the couple of great eye sign guys could be making $1 million, and you really can't. Mate opposite eye colors together, that'll keep the eye strong. But if anything, look for pupils that get small in the sun and rich colors. You don't want washed out, weak colors. You want good, strong, good reds, good yellows, pinks, good colors. It helps with the eye sign. For the 10 to 12 hours, what extra help like peanuts does a pigeon need? If my bird's going to fly 10 to 12 hours in the wing, I just give them a combination of all the Vercellaga Energy, which has safflower and hemp and sunflower, a lot of fat seeds, and traditional mix, which has like rape and hemp. And I don't give peanuts. I don't like peanuts. Most fanciers that use peanuts give too many. They it's like circus pigeons. Peanuts are like pigeon heroin. The fanciers giving it to them out of their mouth. They're, got the bird on their shoulder. Well, 1 or 2 peanuts is a lot of fat for a pigeon. So I'm so focused on body weight. If you are going to give peanuts just the day of shipping, don't mess with them the rest of the time. Or you can put them on the pads when they come home from the race. There's some peanuts on the pads, so they dive right for the pads. But I don't like peanuts. I did a video on why I hate peanuts. And I think just the main reason is people overdo it. They give too many. And I'm so adamant about getting the correct body weight. I know that's more important than a few peanuts. I'm currently doing the dark system on Youngbird team. Some of them dropped the 6th flight and haven't dropped. Some of them dropped the 6th flight and haven't dropped the 1st flight. Some are about to start the heavy molt race season start in August. Well, there's not much you can do. It doesn't make sense that they would drop the middle of the wing. They will both molt the body. In some cases, pigeons in the dark system will continue to molt the wing flights. But again, it's all about the body molt. It has nothing to do with the wing flights. Don't worry about the wing flights other than the last few flights. So I would just keep them on the dark and keep them on the dark system until about a month into the race season. I did a video on that if you want to take a look. That's the secret with the dark system. Have a natural sunrise and then shut them down and race them till the middle of the season on that, and then increase the day, open it up, form will go up, and you can finish the season with that. Let's see. I'm from Florida. Thanks a lot. Well, I'm glad everybody likes it. I'm trying to help, and I'm having fun with this here. It's been a great distraction for me. What would you rather have, winning knowledge or winning pigeons? There's a fancier in my club that says you may not know how to play poker, but if you have all the aces, you're going to do really well. So you need good pigeons. Ultimately, you have to have good pigeons. Then if you can take these good pigeons and put them in position to win, you can have some good results. So good pigeons kept healthy, good body weight, trained adequately. The game is pretty easy. We make it too difficult. We make it way too difficult. And especially a lot of new fanciers or fanciers that didn't have success think there's some magic potion or some secret, or they say, oh, this guy's retired. He has all the time in the world. Well, when my birds go out of the loft this season, twice a week on a lot of weeks, most of the time 3 times a week, they're out of the lofts during the racing season. I have fabulous results. So most fanciers can get them out of the lofts 3 times a week with a little bit of work. Let's see. Oh, that's nice, Mike. Best pigeon knowledge on YouTube. That's sweet of you. Well, I try. If I can help, I've been doing it a long time. and the sport's been really good to me. And I see, a lot of struggle. And again, I keep it really simple. It's common sense. Like, nobody has common sense anymore. And I'm thinking to myself, I'll tell a story. I probably told it before. I was at Silvia Toya's. It was after the Barcelona. Now, the birds just flew like 630 miles or something. So they came home on the Saturday. We're over there on Sunday to see what's going on and what's happening, any more birds. And he's going out to let the other cocks out, his widowhood cocks out to fly, and he's kicking the Barcelona pigeons out to fly. And I turned and looked at Tony Malucci, and I said, what is he doing? And Tony said, oh, that's the way they have always done it. So the bird just flew 630 miles, and it's back out to fly the next day. And again, common sense. It's half this game is common sense. Let's see. Have you used Supra pills? No, I'm not familiar with it. I don't like to do things individually with the birds. It takes a lot of time. I will use the yellow drops, and it's good for respiratory. It's an antimicrobial. It's good for canker. This season, I had a super season. I didn't use any of the natural products that I normally use. Now, I should say, if you haven't been on natural health for years like me, you probably should. It helps. But for my birds, I don't know if it made a difference. I didn't yellow drop them once. The only thing I gave them was the vinegar 2 days. When they came back after the race, they had vinegar for 2 days. I didn't give them the normal flaxseed oil or the cure oil or any of that wind mix. I didn't do it. My results were spectacular. But again, I recommend that you do it because my birds have been on natural health for so many years. Maybe they don't need it as much as somebody that's just switching over. My grandson and I are watching from Belfast. That's great. Thanks, Frederick. And say hi to your grandson. I hope he's enjoying the sport. Yeah, pigeons are a poor man's parrot. Yeah, I've got a parrot too. And it's like having an eternal 2-year-old. I wouldn't recommend a parrot unless that's all you want to mess with all day long. I do feed 80% barley until they leave off the barley, about 30 grams a day. Yeah, Damien, I think that's a good mix. If you barley in your mix, feed until they start leaving barley, you can't make a mistake. Now, I'm a little bit stricter. I've got a good knack. I can look at their crop and see if they had enough feed. But again, I've been looking at the crop for 50 years. So if you feed until they leave a little barley, that's it till the next day. That's perfect. It is perfect. What do you think about the Lederman, Van He, Tournier, Grizzle pigeons? I'm not really familiar with them. Van He was a big name when I was a kid. Terrific loft, super loft, great pigeons. And I never got to visit them, but that was like I started going a little after that to Belgium. And Lederman's a super loft. And I know the Tournier Grizzles were good years and years ago, and there's still probably some good ones along, but everybody has good pigeons. There's a lot of good pigeons out there. And you don't have to chase these names and flavor of the months. There's a lot of good pigeons. Like the neighbor of the champion that you're seeing all the advertisers, the neighbor probably has just as good pigeons, and his pigeons are a third the price. Excuse me. So it's like supply and demand. If the demand is crazy, the price goes up. But there's a lot of good pigeons. Everybody has good pigeons. That's the difference between today and say 30 years ago. I'm trying to think 30 years ago was like the 90s. Today, everybody has good pigeons. Like it wasn't like that. If you had good pigeons years ago, you could do well. But now you have to be pretty good and you need good pigeons, and most everybody has good ones. How far should I train my young birds? Final race at club will be up to 500, 600 kilometers. I mean, if you can get them out, 70, 80, 90 kilometers before the first race, I mean, that's fine. And then use the races to add the distance and, train them a couple times a week. My training system, usually they'll race, and then I like to put the young birds on a training truck, if possible, 1 day a week. They might fly an hour and 20 minutes and then maybe another 35-mile training toss. And, that's it. The rest of the time, they're in the loft. Do you think it's okay to pull the 9th and 10th off older youngsters, and how long will it take to grow? Well, at this point, I mean, you're probably going to be, I'm not sure where you're located, but you might be looking at training You might be going into training next month. So yeah, it's too late. If anything, pull the 9th. If I would suggest for fancies across the board, just cut the 9th, wait week, 10 days, and then pull the 9th flight. That's the most crucial. If it drops the 8th flight and has a half an 8th flight growing in, drops the 9th, it's a big hole in the wing. If you got a full 9th flight, maybe it hasn't reached out on the molt on the 10th. If you're going to mess with flights, just pull the 9th, and I think you'd be better off. And you won't limit the birds with the training or the exercising around the loft to have them that long for them to recover growing back in the 9th and 10th flight. And well, it looks like we've come to the end. I want to thank everybody. I hope you like and subscribe. Tell your friends if you can share the video. I'll put some links below to the things that I mentioned so everybody can maybe in the future that sees the video can watch some of the other videos and things I've touched on. And I appreciate it. And hopefully we'll do this again in a month or so. Or, if you have any questions or comments, put them below and I can answer for everybody. And then other people can read it too. Thank you so much for coming. And I really, really appreciate it. And I will do this again soon. Bye-bye.